Good evening, everyone. I'm Jamila Mizik. It's good having you back with us. Taxi drivers on strike in the face of what they say is a complete disregard and disrespect from the government. We hear about what's behind the claims in this report from our BJ McDermott.
Bleachers in Rawson Square taken over by 150 taxi drivers who calmly awaited an impromptu meeting with the Prime Minister following failed attempts to speak with government officials over a number of long-standing issues. Speaking for the group, Union President Wesley Ferguson said government after government have promised taxi drivers the world, but that in the end they have gotten nothing.
Every taxi stand, every taxi driver is suffering under the heavy hands of every entity in the Bahamas. Everybody have the upper hand on taxi drivers. Taxi drivers are now they have pushed the taxi drivers to the point where they're the lowest of the lowest. Taxi drivers have been disrespected, they've been marginalized, they've been minimized, and every negative connotation that you could think about, taxi drivers have suffered it over the past 61 years. And we were quiet. We sat down and we took it. Government after government disrespected taxi drivers, promised them the world and all, and gave them nothing.
The main bone of contention for the 1,135-strong taxi cab union is tour companies stationed at the Lynden Pindling International Airport.
Some minister decide that they're going to allow SUVs or livery cars to operate like taxis, the law that governs taxi drivers, the laws of the taxis are governed by a specific law. Our laws are in the books. Okay? If this government decides that they're going to abide by the law or want the taxi drivers to abide by the law, the government is also responsible to uphold the law and to abide by it. The livery cars are now operating from the airport on a call-up system, which is totally illegal. The letter of the law says they must operate from a place of business, a pre-arrangement by letter or by telephone, not hustling for taxi work head up.
The unions also decrying working conditions down at Baha Mar, where Mr. Ferguson says the taxi drivers are forced to work in unhealthy working conditions, and that's not all. There's the added claim that taxi drivers are positioned far from the resort's entrance with no means of communication. When it comes to the Prince George Wharf, Mr. Ferguson says that area is a prison.
You have jail security who puts taxi drivers off for asking the tourists if they want a taxi. They put them off the dock for as much as 3 months. At the dock, immediately. The law says that the only entity that's responsible for the disciplinary measures of taxi drivers is the Road Traffic Department. That is gazetted. Okay? So there's no way that the Ministry of Tourism could contrive their own tribunal and put taxi drivers off the dock in a minute. No recourse, no fair trial, no representation. 100% of the time, the taxi driver is guilty.
The union's plans to sit outside the House of Assembly until the Prime Minister meets with them. Reporting for JCN News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Well, we can tell you that having exited the House of Assembly this afternoon, the Prime Minister did not meet with taxi drivers, and this in the face of growing boos. Still on news from the labor scene, Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson's taking grave exception to Education Minister Jeffrey Lloyd's response to C.V. Bethel teachers sitting out of classes following last week's altercation between a biology teacher and 2 male students. Minister Lloyd yesterday told reporters the decision teachers took was illegal and contrary to the industrial agreement, a sentiment he reiterated when he addressed the issues in the House of Assembly this morning.
It is important to note, sir, that the school system in the Bahamas is a safe place for learning and teaching. Notwithstanding this assurance, the ministry continues to review, evaluate, and adjust where necessary to the evolving considerations regarding safety and welfare that confront us. Mr. Speaker, this Honorable House is informed that the formal relationship between the ministry and its teachers governed by the 2015 Industrial Agreement, which is still in force. And that industrial agreement stipulates the process by which grievances should be handled. This labor withdrawal did not observe that process.
Well, according According to Mrs. Wilson, CV Bethel teachers also yesterday met with the school's principal and administrative staff to discuss the way forward to avoid future occurrences. Also in that lengthy WhatsApp message, she chided the minister, suggesting he was given incorrect information. The teachers, she said, devised a plan as per their collective bargaining agreement, and they have agreed to work along with administration for that plan to be successful. Ms. Wilson added that some aspects of the plan will ensure that rules, regulations, and policies are adhered to by the students and that teachers have rostered themselves in strategic places on the campus. Mrs. Wilson went on to implore the minister to truly evaluate administrators to test their suitability for the position, as she says many of the matters can be resolved in a more timely manner if they focus on operating schools efficiently and cease from trying to prevent the Bahamas Union of Teachers from representing its members. 2 trade disputes have since been filed on behalf of the teachers at CV Bethel Senior School. Meantime, the Deputy Prime Minister, hoping to put to rest renewed claims of the government's alleged role and knowledge of a purported inheritance of up to $79 billion to Derek Roll. As the decades-old story goes, Roll, now deceased, inherited a fortune from a deceased American couple. However, his efforts to obtain the inheritance have been reportedly thwarted by the government, who, along with so-called unscrupulous bankers, had conspired to hide and steal the money. It's further alleged that the Minutes administration rushed the dormant accounts bill through Parliament to abscond the multi-billion-dollar inheritance.
Neither the ministry, where the money gone? That's the Ministry of Finance, nor the central bank, nor the named commercial bank elected to respond formally to this patently absurd tale, simply because it was and is a patently absurd tale. However, given that the matter has been raised by a member of this House, the government feels that it is important to state its position formally and for the record. Mr. Speaker, neither the Ministry of Finance, nor the Central Bank, nor any other governmental entity were or are aware of this alleged inheritance that was supposedly left to Mr. Derek Roll.
The DPM says neither the central bank nor any other public entity has had or does have knowledge or possession of any funds related to this alleged inheritance. Neither has any other relevant agency been approached by a domestic or international entity about matters related to this investigation, adding that the government is not aware of legal action that has been commenced in the Bahamas or any other jurisdiction in respect to what he called the largest theft of monies ever recorded.
One would certainly believe that there is more than sufficient incentive for this matter to have been advanced over the last 20 years.
As far as the government's concerned, then, the story is completely untrue, and the government's exploring the possibility of establishing a transshipment port in Mayaguana, poultry and processing plants in North Andros and Eleuthera by the owners of Bahamas Striping Group of companies, as well as a few other family island projects.
Investments for Eleuthera include the Philotea Boutique Resort Hotel project in Governor's Harbor, Disney Cruise Lines low-density cruise port destination at Lighthouse Beach in Bannerman Town, Windermere Island North Community Resort, Jacks Bay Community Resort and Davis Harbor Marine south of Rock Sound, and the $4 million Harbor Island Marina and Community Resort. The latter 2 projects were recently approved for expansion of developments that were approved previously and are currently underway.
The Prime Minister's national address also noted improvements on tap for Abaco, including the proposed Tarzaz family $580 million investment for the development of a 5-star residential resort and marina in South Abaco. This involves the upgrade and expansion of the Sandy Port airstrip, the development of the Sandy Point ferry dock as a cargo transshipment port and construction area, and the extension of Queens Highway. As for Andros and Long Island,
we have approved a Bahamian joint venture partnership arrangement for the development of the Blue Hole Marina and Lodge in Fresh Creek, consisting of a 12-room lodge and an 80-slip marina, including a bulk fuel facility. Long Island will experience growth to its economy with the development of the Pinders Bay $5 million 28-bungalow community development project at Lower Harbor. This project will hire about 30 Bahamians during construction and 9 Bahamians to operate and maintain the residential community. Also in the works for Long Island is a new 5-star eco-resort by Star Resort with 515 luxury residencies.
In terms of international investment, he said the Family Islands are attracting tens of millions of dollars and significant projects to energize their economies. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
This segment of the news was brought to you by Alive.